Away from that, the federal government has condoled with families of the victims of the Anambra State and Abuja as well as Ibadan stampedes. Minister of Information and National Orientation Mohammed Idris, who conveyed the condolences, however, cautioned those politicizing the unfortunate incident, saying Tinubu's reset of the economy has nothing to do with the stampedes' deaths. The minister said the tragedies were deeply saddening and underscores the importance of ensuring proper crowd management during such charitable activities, especially during the festive season. Acknowledging the noble intentions of organizers seeking to bring relief to vulnerable members of society, the minister admonished all individuals and organizations planning similar events to comply with the directive of the Inspector General of Police, Mr. Kaide Egbetokun, on liaison with police formations for effective crowd control and security management. Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Party, PDP, has described the 3 recent food stampedes in Nigeria as, quote, an ugly testament to the alarming level of misery, poverty, hunger, starvation, sense of hopelessness, and desperation for survival currently plaguing our nation, end quote, under the President Bola Tinubu-led All Progressives Congress APC government. In a statement on Sunday, PDP spokesperson Debo Olugunagba said the tragic stampedes at private food distribution events in Oyo and Anambra states, as well as Abuja, which claimed the lives of over 60 citizens, could have been averted. The PDP commiserated with the families of the victims of the 3 food queue stampedes and called for urgent medical attention for the survivors. Still on the stampedes deaths, states in the face of the rising death tolls from the stampedes, states across the Federation are coming up with fresh regulatory framework for charity events. In Lagos State, for instance, it's now mandatory for charity organizers to engage with the State Safety Commission before embarking on charity events. The Director General of the Lagos State Safety Commission, Larry Mojola, who gave the automator, said the state government is doing everything to prevent accidents of any form in public offices. The Ondo State Attorney General and Commissioner for Justice, Dr. Olukayode Ajulu San, also introduced new crowd control guidelines for law enforcement, event organizers, and local authorities on Sunday. Similarly, governments of Anambra, Abia, Akwa Ibom, Kogi, Rivers, and Delta states have also come up with measures for crowd control during palliative distribution events. In the meantime, a former governor of Anambra State and former presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Peter Obi, has cautioned against unguarded restriction on the distribution of palliatives. Obi, who wrote in a post on his X handle on Monday morning, believes the IGP's directive will discourage Nigerians and organizations from carrying out their charity work. The Inspector General of Police had demanded organizers of similar charity works to carry security agencies along and ensure strict adherence to crowd and safety management protocols. Obi agrees that the directive is a timely response, but argues that it is open to abuse, adding that acts of goodwill should not be hindered by excessive bureaucracy. And now to join us to discuss this, we're joined by a public affairs analyst, Theo Akatugba. Theophilus, thank you so much for joining us. I mean, let's just get started, shall we? How effective is the government addressing the underlying causes of widespread hunger and poverty that are driving people to desperate measures? And we're seeing charity and palliative drives so far, such as participating in potentially dangerous food distribution events and exercise.
Well, you can see that most of the activities this year are by private individuals, and government in its own don't seem to have anything in terms of palliative or sharing of anything this year. I think the government seems satisfied that the measures they are taking to improve the economic situation is enough to alleviate poverty, to improve the situation in the country. For me, as we all know, that sharing of food and giving out of money has never really alleviated poverty. However, it is just for temporal benefit, and that has not reduced the poverty levels in our country. So what do I have to say? I can't see much being done. What I can only tell you, that poverty can be reduced if the quality of life is improved. If you have electricity, if you have water, if you have good roads, if you have good education. And so I hope what the government is doing is sufficient to improve these conditions.
It's very interesting that this has happened in 3 states, in the South, Southeast, and Southwest, I beg your pardon, Southeast, and also the capital as well. And there's been no, condolence visit. There's been no speech by the presidency. There's been nothing, really. But away from the government, let's talk about the civil society organizations and what role they can play, and the private sector can also play in providing humanitarian assistance. Because whether we like it or not, people are hungry, and the stats and the inflation numbers show that, and the behavioral patterns of the people show that. How best can they address the needs of vulnerable population in a very safe and responsible manner?
Well, people are hungry indeed, and where there's hunger and poverty, sharing of free food and free materials can always cause a rush. It can lead to chaos if it is not properly managed, like we have witnessed in Ibadan, Anambra, and Abuja, as a result of poor crowd management, as a result of poor crowd control, have led to this unfortunate development. When you gather people in a very small area, there are no proper access and exit points, no proper coordination, can lead to a lot of panic, chaos and panic, which we have seen. For me, there's a lot of politics that's coming into it. If we allow that to continue, we might not be able to find proper measures to prevent this in the future. There's no way a time will come that there will be no single poor person in our society. Even in the advanced society, people live outside, people are homeless, people have no food to eat as well. That if you throw food that is free, you'll find out that people will also rush at it. What we must learn is, how do we really educate ourselves that anywhere we find a crowd, even the individual, will have a way to govern himself, not to talk of those who organize such events. If you are organizing a free food giving event in highly, poor or highly poor area, where you have mass number of poor people, and where you know that we are all saying there's hunger in the land, and you have such poor crowd control measures, it's not going to be fair that we are just going to drag government into the unfortunate development. So I think that we should focus on how other organizers of such events can do better, can improve the crowd control measure, they can improve crowd management measures, they can improve how to properly organize the people, that they will not experience such an ugly situation of a stampede.
I think that to point fingers at the private sectors and those who are organizing, just trying to be helpful as best as they can, and then try to remove the government from this it's two-faced, don't you think so? Because the NIN comes to mind very quickly, and how it's been organized so far and how people have been able to register comes to mind. The international passport registration comes to mind. The voter card collection exercise comes to mind. Everything that the government has even done, not palliative this time, anything that the government has done regarding the people, this has nothing to do with the present administration, but more to speak about the government in general and the ruling elite. When it comes to them being able to organize anything that has to do with the people, it hasn't been gotten correctly. So is the issue palliatives, or is the issue really how we do things in this country?
I like that. I like what you have said. Government is made of people. There are people who are either poorly educated, poorly oriented, or poorly civilized. They are only agencies of government, and they are our fellow citizens who, in my opinion, have a lot of mediocrity as part of their culture. And so we organize events from government to private sector. We have done very poorly and badly in managing crowds. In fact, we have done so poorly in educating our people. Very uncivilized, very backward, very, very poor in considering the well-being of the other. Selfishness in the order of the day. Look at the way we drive on our roads. We do not care about one another. And so it's a huge problem that I said, let us not politicize it. Let's look at how Nigerians generally take advantage of situations to the detriment of the neighbor.
I mean, you talked about education and how, you know, people have exceedingly over the years continually, the education gap continues to, you know, expand. And if we're going to have that conversation, there's no how the government is, and this is not going to be politicized. It's like, how do you then not politicize this? I think that's the most critical question here. How do you not politicize this? Because this has to do with education, this has to do with social conditioning, this has to do with the mindset of our people, which is instructed by the ruling elite. Everything still boils down back to the ruling elite. So how then can we talk about this without politicizing this?
Thank you very much. If you have a citizenry that is of poor quality, they will produce the government. The government comes from the people. So you can't be talking of a ruling class without talking about the quality of citizens. What is the quality of the Nigerian citizens? Have we invested in them over the last 50 years? What are we harvesting? We're harvesting a society where people are very lawless, very disobedient to simple regulation. Even to obey driving rules, they do not. They struggle to do so, except there is harsh law enforcement. So we need to do a lot. You can't get saints from demons. Nigerians have work to do on themselves, by themselves, from the home front, from the schools. We need to do the education of the heart instead of the education of the head.
Well, if there's one thing for certain, when we think about this, when it comes to education of the mind, the conditioning, I feel like most of the badly behaved Nigerians are just people who have given up on the system and revolting. And how do they do that? Badly behaved. It reminds me of toddlers. When you don't give them what they want, they have to react any way they can possibly.
If you give up on yourself and your country, then what life do you have?
Well, look at the numbers. Theophilus, look at the numbers of people that have jackpot out of the country.
No,
That's your answer right there.
This is not a laughing matter. We got to be serious. We got to know that we have responsibility to the well-being of our neighbor. Look at the stampedes. Look at the behavior. Look at the locations. All of those people have good intentions. But of course, somebody is going to put 5,000 people in a place, and look at the quality of crowd management that is put there. Look at the environment in Anambra. Look at what happened in Abuja, a Catholic church that has all the resources. So there is high desperation. That tells you need to prepare twice or thrice as much as you would have prepared if the poverty levels were.
Mr. Akatugba, I wish we could continue this conversation, but we're pretty much out of time. I want to say thank you so much for taking out the time to join us this evening. Public Affairs Analyst Theophilus Akatugba just talking to us about the recent unjust prevention of the stampedes that we've seen in the recent weeks.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We're going to a short break. When we come back on the other side, road accident in Abia State leaves 8 dead with 3 injured. We have the details after the break. Join us again.